Hey guys, welcome back to the right side. I thought that for my first content video on the channel, it would be fun to take the political compass test to get out in the open where I lay for you guys and for me as a little reminder. I do remember taking this test in the past, and I remember having a slight leftward bias in some of the ways that the questions are worded, and I'm sure that we'll get to see that later in the test. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right, here we are. First question. If economic globalization is inevitable, it should primarily serve humanity rather than the interests of transnational corporations. This is exactly what I was talking about. Where in one case, if you don't say it should serve humanity entirely, it's gonna put you in like the right wing kind of big business type of sphere. So I usually think that business, at least small business, has your interest at heart because they have to rely on customer service and that kind of thing to kind of stay in business. So in this case, I guess I'll go to primarily serve humanity rather than the interests of transnational corporations. I'm going to disagree with the premise, which will put me in the right wing, but it's really, what are you going to do? I always support my country, whether it was right or wrong. Disagree. Strongly disagree. I would consider myself a nationalist, but you don't have to blindly support your country. If your country does something bad and you don't like what your country is doing, you don't have to support it. You can always love your country, but this is another example of the wording of the questions is a little weird and obviously kind of pushes towards one way. No one chooses their country of birth, so it's foolish to be proud of it. I understand this question. I typically kind of think of pride as kind of being you should only have pride in things that you can control, kind of a thing. So when people say like, "Oh, I'm proud of this," I'm proud of being black, I'm proud of being white. It's kind of weird because you don't do anything for it. So what are you feeling prideful over? But I'm definitely proud to be an American. So I think that might be an exception to the rule. But I would strongly disagree that it's foolish to be proud of something. Um, when it comes to like country wise. Well, our race has many superior qualities compared with other races. Now, this is obviously going to be a black-white question, but I could very easily say like the human race is better than other species or whatever. But I'm going to strongly disagree with this because I know the connotation of what's going on. Of course, everyone's equal no matter what the skin color is. But another example of why these questions, can be a little bit tricky. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Now, this is. I would say that when you're doing like the realpolitik things, where you're trying to be a little bit more. Well, you have diplomacy, pragmatic, I think is the word I was looking for. When you're trying to be a bit more pragmatic about things, it makes sense that the enemy of your enemy it would be your friend. You can kind of help twist the arm of someone, and conflicts like that, situations like this, it actually kind of helps bring a lot of countries back together where they may not have been. So I'm going to agree with that. Military action that defies international law is sometimes justified. Strongly agree, because international law is stupid. This is why I will have a video coming up soon down the pipeline about why we should leave NATO. Anytime you have a big kind of organization that is not defining, but governing another country, like the UN or something, or you're beholden to something that you don't always have total control over, is nonsense. It's ridiculous. It's stupid. And that is what international law sometimes is, because international law can be very corrupt in its enforcement or application. Um, so the expectations or the bar that some world organization has, um, define that as all is sometimes totally justified, 110%. There is now a worrying fusion of information and entertainment. Now, when I see a lot of other creators take this test and they read this question, it's interesting that they actually strongly disagree with it, because it's like, oh no, it's always been here. So I'm not worried about the new wave. I think that in order to get the most accurate kind of result from the test, you want to answer it as close to the interpretation that the test is going to have as possible. So right here, there is now a worrying fusion of information and entertainment. I think they're going to be talking in the context of the modern times, modern society, which in that case, I would guess I would agree. I mean, you have documentaries, that's information, entertainment, but I think what they're talking about is the fact that you have like talk show hosts that aren't able to keep their opinions out of things all the time, that kind of damage those kinds of institutions. So in that case, I would agree. There should be certain things that are apolitical that we can go to for escape, and the dissolution of those institutions is really unfortunate. Page 2. Now the economy. We're talking attitudes here, not the FTSE index. People are ultimately divided more by class than nationality. Now, I don't really know what they mean by divided. If by divided you mean there is more tension, well, this is the whole populist argument. Nationality is really kind of dumb as long as you have assimilation into a society. But ultimately divided more by class than by nationality. I think classism is a big problem, actually. Having those who are, educated class versus non-educated class. It's not always economic. So I guess in that case, I would actually strongly agree. Controlling inflation is more important than controlling unemployment. So this is a really good question, because there's almost nothing a government can do to control unemployment, because they're not the market. The market can do that. They can roll back red tape and regulation like the minimum wage or union law that will allow further employment. But the Federal Reserve has direct control over inflation, as well as the Congress. So, which are kind of coincided. But the government has much more control over the inflation and less control over the unemployment. They can have policies that influence on the unemployment, but everything else in the economy works on the dollar. So a strong dollar allows for a strong economy. You could have the most favorable employment laws in the books, economic policies in the books, right? But if you don't have inflation under control and everyone is playing with an unstable dollar, that foundation in of itself is weak. So with that being said, controlling inflation is more important. Strongly agree. Because corporations cannot be trusted to voluntarily protect the environment, they require regulation. This is an interesting question because I actually remember what I heard RFK talk about recently, where he said that naturally, with manufacturing and economies and industrialization, without subsidies, we would not have pollution, because capitalism puts values in the resources and allocating those resources most effectively. So if what he was explaining was that each kind of company wouldn't be polluting because the waste is valuable to someone in the economy, someone in the supply chain. So whenever you have pollution, it's because of subsidies, stuff like that, which I thought was interesting. But because corporations cannot be trusted to voluntarily protect the environment, they require regulation. I can see why if you have an oil plant or oil refinery next to your house, you want the government to kind of step in and make sure that things are going through your yard, things like that, which would be a regulation. I mean, I don't know if it cannot be. I'm gonna say slightly disagree here. I don't know what do you mean by trusted to voluntarily protect the environment. If the consumers start to value um, environmental protection, things like that, then companies have to adapt to those things and give the market what it wants. If the market wants things that create pollution and um, the market isn't giving it, then that company is going to fail, or that market's not going to do very well. So if the demand side changes, then the supply side will as well. From each according to his ability to each according to his need is a fundamentally good idea. This is communism. I will strongly disagree with this. Because one person can, because the other person needs it, those are not valid reasons to force the work of one to depend on the work of another. The beauty of the free market is that the one who can is pushed to do so because he wants the one who needs their money. He needs their money. He wants their money. And so he will provide services, provide a product that will satisfy him so that he can get his money. That's the beauty of it. It's a voluntary exchange. And a voluntary exchange is the incentives really matter. The incentive under each according to his ability to each according to his need is all about forcing one side to do it for the benefit of another. And force is never a good incentive. The freer the market, the freer the people. I generally tend to agree with this. I agree with this on a kind of a domestic level. I think free trade is kind of blown up when you have actors like China and other countries that are very mercantilist and very hawkish on trade. It hurts domestic economies a lot. So domestically, I tend to agree. Free markets, free the people. This also highly depends on other policies like immigration and social policy, things like that. Just a disordered society will then produce a disordered market. If I put strongly agree, then it's going to push you really far or further to the right. But as a general rule, I generally agree. It's a sad reflection on our society that something as basic as drinking water is now a bottled, branded consumer product. I understand where the question is coming from. They have to buy water, and it's not something that's always readily available publicly. But when you allow water to be a commodity, you allow companies to acquire it, obviously, bottle it in mass quantities for low prices, so a lot more people can get it without the government stepping in, without a corruption and bureaucracy, and creating shortages. That's what the alternative would be. So, in sad reflection on our society, I don't know if I would say it's a sad reflection. It's definitely trying to hint at the fact that maybe commoditization is bad, but so I don't strongly disagree. They're trying to go for like an emotional kind of pull here. So let's go strongly disagree. Land shouldn't be a commodity to be bought and sold. Oh man, what are you gonna do with it? Are you gonna have the government kind of seize it and then equally distribute it? How would you buy a house? How would you do any of that kind of stuff? I'm not really sure what that would mean. logistically, economically, what does that look like? What does a world without land ownership look like? Um, sees property, sees land. Government seizes land and distributes it. Like I don't know what that means. Strongly disagree. I don't really even know what that question is trying to go at. It is regrettable that many personal fortunes are made by people who simply manipulate money and contribute nothing to their society. I am going to assume that they are trying to hint at people who do stuff on the stock market, things like that. But what people don't understand about the stock market is that even banks at a certain level is that when you have money in the bank, the money's not sitting there. The bank needs to make money itself. So when you have money in the banks want to lend that money out because stagnant money doesn't help the bank. The bank makes money on interest. So it needs a cash flow. And so if I deposit $1,000 into the bank is, well, they're legally required to keep some of it in the reserves. But with the other amount of money, they go out and they lend it so that they can get money on that money as interest and thus stay alive. People who invest in the stock market are the same thing. People aren't manipulating money. Someone who bought a stock a long time ago in Apple and has like millions of dollars worth of that stock now is not manipulating anything. That's ridiculous. You're buying shares in a company that influences our market capitalization and their valuation, which also then trickles down for lots of reasons and affects lots of things. So it is regrettable. Strongly disagree. We need more investment. Investment's really good. Investment helps money circulate the economy and reallocate and recycle. Protectionism is sometimes necessary. I strongly agree. Going back to my China point earlier, where you have certain countries that have unfair employment laws and labor laws, stuff like that, where people in China, you had Foxconn and you have all these sweatshops in China. Unless you have protectionist policies that protect the domestic economy, those types of things will run a economy to the ground, essentially. And so unless you have protectionism in those cases, it will rot the domestic economy, which is what we saw with NAFTA, with a lot of free trade policies, where corporations and businesses will naturally tend to flow into the economies of least resistance, of easiest survival. And the United States domestic economy, which is very strong with labor laws, stuff like that, isn't that friendly for corporations and businesses. So when they are free to go to a country like Mexico, for example, that doesn't have those types of laws or aren't that stringent, they will flood Mexico. You have corporate tax rates that are influencing this, subsidies that are doing this, things like that, unions, wage laws, all that kind of stuff. But unless you have protectionism to protect the domestic economy, like what Trump says, like, hey, if you leave the country to China and you're trying to bring those things back, there's going to be a tariff. Those are really good. I like those a lot. I think that those are really healthy for a domestic economy. The only social responsibility of a company should be to deliver a profit to its shareholders. Here's the funny thing. It says social responsibility, not fiscal responsibility. Now, a company that is publicly traded has a legal fiduciary responsibility to deliver a profit to its shareholders. But social responsibility relates to how the emotional side of the market, which in my opinion is where nonprofits have more of a place to step in those kinds of situations. I hit my mic. Oops. In those cases, social responsibility, I don't typically like companies doing social responsibility stuff like corporate social responsibility, stuff like that. I don't really like, because I think they're pandering is what I think it is. Others may call it customer service. I tend to not see it that way. But delivering a profit isn't exactly what I would imagine to be a social responsibility. But going, going to the point of the question, the only social responsibility of a company should be deliver profit to its shareholders. I would strongly agree. If the company isn't focusing on money, actually no, I'm gonna go strongly agree, because there are certain things that you can compromise your principles on to make more money, and in that case, it's not worth it. In that case, it's bad. It's negative. Chasing the money, chasing the dollar, maximizing the dollar isn't exactly the best thing to do. There are a lot of things that are bad you can do and maximize the dollar. The rich are too highly taxed. Agree. This goes back to my point of the domestic economy and having a fair kind of economical landscape or climate for businesses to exist and to grow, things like that. Taxing people too much is generally a bad idea. It'll decentivize production and do all that kind of stuff. So the rich are definitely too highly taxed. Those with the ability to pay should have access to higher standards of medical care. I actually strongly agree. I think that medical care is not a right. That's not meaning that I don't think that people should get it. You can go to the emergency room today for anything and get seen. They're not going to kick you out like a bar or something. That the idea that people believe that is ridiculous. And just like education, how the more money you can spend for a better tutor, the more money you have, the more you can spend on a better doctor. To me, that just makes sense. The idea that everyone pays the same isn't abiding by those market principles, where doctors will go to hospitals that pay them well, things like that. And if doctors and nurses want to get paid a little bit more, they should actually be advocating on, cracking down on the administrative costs a little bit. But that's another topic for another day. But those with the ability to pay should have access to higher standards of medical care. Absolutely, without a doubt. Governments should penalize businesses that mislead the public. Strongly agree. The Purdue Pharma case that's going through the courts right now is a big example of that. You can have a lot of companies peddling false things, and because of that, it hurts people. Companies like Purdue Pharma who mislead the public, especially when they have special governmental access or protections, should definitely be penalized. A genuine free market requires restrictions on the ability of predatory multinationals to create monopolies. Monopolies are created by regulatory capture. And regulatory capture policies are almost always pushed by the biggest corporations, biggest companies in the market. This is why Amazon, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, Tim Cook, all those guys are major Democratic donors. They want to institute policies that are harder on business because they can survive it, but the people underneath them cannot. They struggle, and that's good for them. This is why they always kind of advocate for a higher minimum wage. They may play it to the union kind of whatever the beat of their drum. I will say I tend to disagree because I don't think in a free market where you have small businesses and companies that compete against each other to create the best product, I think that kind of automatically dissolves monopolies rather than forms them. Page 3 of 6. Now a look at some of your personal social values. Abortion, when the woman's life is not threatened, should always be legal. Strongly agree. I think that even when it comes to life of the mother, those cases are widely, they alter what those words mean. Giving the mother medical treatment, medical intervention to save her life, when the intention is to save her life, is not an abortion, because an abortion is an intentional termination of a pregnancy. It's the intentional ending of the baby's life. If the intention for a medical intervention is to do something with the mother to save her, and the baby dies in the process, that is not an abortion. That's incidental. That's not intentional. So therefore, that would not be an abortion. So most of the time, when it's life of the mother, that's the kind of situations that they really mean. And so Uh, I think this is the only abortion question on here, so I would go strongly agree. All authority should be questioned. I would. I guess I would go strongly agree, especially with your government should be questioned all the time because they serve you. I guess the one thing I was kind of unsure about is when it comes to, like, parents or authority. But if you have bad parents, you should definitely question them. So, but if you have, like, solid parents, you should respect them 110%. Um, but all authority should be questioned. I'm going to assume that they mean, like, teachers. I don't know if they should be questioned. Although bad teachers, maybe. But I'll stick with the strongly agree. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. I'm going to go. I'm going to go agree because I remember a quote from Mahatma Gandhi, which was, "An eye for an eye leaves the whole world blind." And I hate pacifism. I think it's ridiculous. I think it's retarded. I think it's ridiculous. I think it's so stupid. I think that if you get punched in the face, a pacifist wouldn't fight back. So a pacifist would just get slaughtered, and it wouldn't do anything, which is ridiculous. Um, but, like, if for an eye and a tooth for a tooth means that because you stole $1,000, you get $1,000 stolen from you. That's not exactly. I don't know if that's a punishment kind of system I would want in a society, and so um yeah, I think that, like, for mass murderers there should be the death penalty. I'm a big supporter of that, and I think that'll come in sooner. But for right now, I'll stick with agree. Taxpayers should not be expected to prop up any theaters, museums that cannot survive on a commercial basis. Strongly agree. I do not like subsidies. I do not like subsidies. I do not like subsidies. The only remote subsidy that I may support would be to incentivize families, but I don't support any economic subsidies for, like, companies or, like, industries. Not a big fan of that. Schools should not make classroom attendance compulsory. I remember having a conversation with my mother about this the other day. Um, I don't really know what I mean to not make them go to school. So, does that mean, like, homeschooling? Would that count? Would that mean that things like homeschooling would not be compulsory? Is that what they're talking about? I don't really know. To me, that's kind of confusing. Um, hmm. I'm gonna, I guess, totally disagree. Or I guess the idea of public schools making it compulsory is kind of weird because the responsibility and the duty to educate your children first in lies with you, and when you enroll them in public education, you defer their responsibilities to the government, but you never kind of lose that responsibility from yourself. You're always constantly deferring to the government for your duty to educate your own child. So I guess I would say disagree. All people have their rights, but it is better for all of us that certain different sorts of people rather should keep to their own kind. I know what this means. I'm going to strongly disagree. Um, this is trying to hint at interracial marriage, stuff like that. They're trying to get you on, where just because one person may believe it's a states' rights issue because it's not strictly named in the Constitution, that doesn't mean that they don't support gay marriage, interracial marriage. So in that case, I would definitely disagree with the wording of this question. Could parents sometimes have to spank their children? Strongly agree. I think that being soft on children makes them soft and makes the society soft. Parents, properly enforce rules with your children. Uh, do it for the betterment of society later on down the road. It's natural for children to keep some secrets from their parents. Um, I guess I would strongly agree with this. There's a rebellious nature to kids, especially teenagers when they grow up. I think that's only natural for a lot of them. Of course, it doesn't make it ethical. You should never keep secrets of anyone. Um, Although I guess there are some cases, if we're going to go into the nuances of stuff, that doesn't apply. But naturally, for children to keep some secrets from their parents, strongly agree. See, hint, notice that they don't give it's a very broad idea of secrets. Possessing marijuana for personal use should not be a criminal offense. Strongly disagree. I think marijuana is a state issue. I think it's a local issue. Um, I think that I only support marijuana for medical uses. I don't agree with the recreational side of things. I think it's just a sign of a decaying society, and you shouldn't always let people destroy themselves. Um, so with that being said, should that be a criminal offense? I think the community should have whatever rules they want for these types of things, but um, not criminalizing marijuana isn't a good thing. It's a good thing for giving communities better autonomy and enforcing that type of thing. A prime function of schooling should be to equip the future generation to find jobs. I think that I would absolutely agree with this. I don't know what else schooling would be. An informed populace would be good to find jobs. I mean, what are we educating them in? Are we going to have it 12 years of liberal arts education? I mean, what? There should be way more tech schools and things like that. Getting the trades back. Whenever companies actually, sponsor things in schools, I actually really like that. I think it's really good. So, honestly, strongly agree, rather. People with serious inheritable disabilities should not be allowed to reproduce. Strongly disagree. That's crazy. That's some like Nazism type stuff. That's not good. To have those kinds of restrictions and those kinds of social values kind of implemented in your laws. Not good. Don't do that. The most important thing for children is to learn is to accept discipline. I strongly agree. Discipline is a two-way word here. Discipline, you could mean discipline in the I wake up at a certain time, I do this, I do that, I'm very disciplined, I stick to things. Or it is the punishment type of discipline. I tend to think that discipline is very useful and almost necessary for children, for developing people, developing children, I guess. Discipline is freedom. Having control of yourself gives you the true freedom of doing what you want. So accepting discipline is very important. There are no savage and civilized people. There are only different cultures. Strongly disagree. Back in the day, there were a lot of civilizations that would cut the heads off of fathers and cut the hearts out of fathers in front of their families. That's crazy. That's nuts. There are definitely bad cultures. Multiculturalism is bunk. Those who are able to work or refuse the opportunity should not expect society's support. Absolutely, strongly agree. This goes back to the other question where from each according to his ability to each according to his need. Just because you need something does not mean that the government should compel someone else to do it for you. If you can work and you're refusing the opportunity, you should not be expecting me or my brother or my parents to be paying for you to stay home because you don't want to work. Get the fuck out of here. When you are troubled, it is better not to think about it, but to keep busy with more cheerful things. I'm going to slightly agree because there are certain things you can, of course, bring out that you need to confront head on in the moment, but typically stewing on your own bad thoughts, own negative emotions, does not help you. It makes you more anxious. It makes you more depressed. Getting your mind off of those things is much more healthy and is much more productive. Of course, not everything, which is why I said slightly agree. First generation immigrants can never be fully integrated within their country. Strongly disagree. Fully is an absolutist term. I don't like that. Anything's possible. It may be difficult, but the idea that no one could ever fully be integrated within their country in their first generation is completely nuts. Not true. What's good for the most successful corporations is always ultimately good for us. Strongly disagree. Again, this goes back to regulatory capture, where businesses are fundamentally driven to serve their fiduciary shareholders and to stay in business and to survive. So in those cases, if their best interest is to survive, then they want to crack down on competition and create a monopoly. That is not ultimately what's good for us. So in that case, it is not true at all in any respect. No broadcasting institution, however independent its content, should receive public funding. I will agree with this because I understand how should something like PBS exist? I don't know. I don't think so. People should be free, of course, to broadcast whatever they want. But I don't think so. No. Receive public funding. I don't like subsidies, so that scares me a little bit. So, next page, 4 of 6. Our civil liberties are being excessively curbed in the name of counterterrorism. Strongly agree. 100%. A significant advantage of a one-party state is it avoids all arguments that delay progress in a democratic system. Well, it is technically an advantage of a one-party state, but it is bad. So, strongly disagree. Although the electronic age makes official surveillance easier, only wrongdoers need to be worried. Strongly disagree. Surveillance is not good. Big Brother is watching. 1984. George Orwell. Not good. We need to watch it. The death penalty should be an option for most serious crimes. Absolutely, strongly agree. 100%. In a civilized society, one must always have people above to be obeyed and people below to be commanded. Strongly agree. Hierarchies are important. Hierarchies are natural. Fighting things that are naturally occurring like that, or things that we naturally desire or strive, are bad. That's not good. Abstract art that doesn't represent anything shouldn't be considered art at all. I don't really know, because art is such a thing. It's one of those things where it's, where on the spectrum does it not become art? I think that if you have a canvas and you throw paint on it, just randomly, I don't know if that's considered art, but people value different things. I guess I would slightly agree. In criminal justice, punishment should be more important than the rehabilitation. Strongly agree. 100%. It's a waste of time to try and rehabilitate some criminals. Strongly agree. 100%. The business person and manufacturer are more important than the writer and artist. Strongly disagree. Culture is very important, and the writer and artist influence culture. Culture is what drives society. Good culture spurs and fosters a healthy society. Mothers may have careers, but their first duty is to be homemakers. Strongly agree. Same thing with fathers. The father's first duty is to provide for his family, and having a career is his way of doing that. But his number one duty is to provide for his family, not to have a job. Providing for your family can take lots of different routes. Almost all politicians promise economic growth, but we should heed the warnings of climate science that growth is detrimental to our efforts to curb global warming. Strongly disagree. I think climate change, the climate crisis, is a useful tool for the government to crack down on more regulation, regulatory capture, seizing things in industry. Not good, not good, not good. I don't want to have to pay a carbon tax. Making peace with the establishment is an important aspect of maturity. Strongly disagree. The establishment, I'm going to assume, is referencing the government and then the status quo. We affect the status quo, and we can change the status quo anytime, any day. We have to band together and be strong enough to do it. Page 5 of 6. If you got through that okay, you'll find these propositions on religion a breeze. Astrology accurately explains many things. Disagree. I think that whenever I read horoscopes and you're like, oh wow, it's a coincidence. I just view them as coincidences. Um, I don't know if it explains many things. I'm sure that there's religious basis on things, but why you should be wary of astrology, I don't think it explains many things. You cannot be moral without being religious. I actually strongly. See, technically, I would say I disagree with this because I think it could be accidentally moral. I think you could do moral things not thinking about it. But there's no basis of morality without spirituality and religion. Subjective morality is evil and it's not good. There's an objective moral law, obviously, and without recognizing that, you don't have to recognize that in order to participate in it. You can do something that's moral without believing that you're operating that system. That's possible. So in that case, I kind of read this as you cannot do a moral act without being religious. Non religious people do moral things all the time, so disagree. Charity is better than Social Security as a means of helping the genuinely disadvantaged. I strongly agree. I think that people want to be charitable, and if they know that there's a public program that's out there to help disenfranchised people, then they won't do it themselves. So, charity is much better at that. Some people are naturally unlucky. I would agree with this. I think that there are some people who have different intensities of their past. It's unlucky for you to be born to a single mother. That's unlucky. But I guess in that situation, I would agree. It's important that my child schools instills religious values. I would strongly agree. I definitely want my kids to go to like a Catholic school or something, or some type of similar education. Last page. Sex outside of marriage is usually immoral. Strongly agree. Sex outside of marriage. Hookup culture is awful. Probably do a video on that at some point. Sex outside of marriage is it's a decaying of the meaning of sex, and that it should be between in the context of marriage, things like that. Sex is a beautiful thing, sacred, and hookup culture just wants to take it and spread it for everyone, but it ruins it, and that's not good. A same-sex couple in a stable love relationship should not be excluded from the possibility of child adoption. Slightly agree. I think that there should be deferring to heterosexual couples, but if the only people in line are gay couples, then so be it. But there should definitely be deference to straight couples first. Pornography depicting consenting adults should be legal for the adult population. Strongly disagree. I think pornography is a drug. I don't think it's good. I think that it's at least a states' rights issue, if not a. I think that we have the duty as a populace to get rid of it for the betterment of young men, boys, and everyone involved. What goes on in a private bedroom between consenting adults is no business of the state. That's funny. That goes back to literally the past question. I mean, you could do whatever you want. That doesn't give you the right to distribute it, and those types of things. If you want to film you and your spouse having sex in your own bedroom, you could do that. It shouldn't, you don't have the right to distribute that, however. But it's also not true, because if you go into your private bedroom and start smacking your kids and abusing them and abusing your wife, the business of the state, that is a business of the state, because you're inflicting on the rights of another person. So I would actually strongly disagree. No one can feel naturally homosexual. I would strongly disagree with this. I think people have all types of urges. Some are developed, some are innate, some are nature. But that doesn't always mean that you don't have the free will to act upon those. These days, openness about sex has gone too far. Strongly agree. This goes into the point of dissolving what sex means into this atheistic kind of, treatment of it, which is not good. Sex is a sacred thing. That is incredibly intimate. It affects men and women differently. We should heed that and respect that, and not think that we can just use it or participate in it, act with it any way we want, whatever we want, however we want. Not good. Let's see where I stand. I remember this kind of explains what everything is. My political compass. Right. Authoritarian. Funny. But I don't necessarily think this is incorrect. I definitely lean a little bit more socially conservative than I guess others would. I guess it's not surprising that I'm halfway to the right. It's not surprising to me at all. I would say this is generally pretty accurate. I tend to defer on a lot of social issues to a states' rights issue, like marijuana. I don't think marijuana should be legalized federally or decriminalized federally. I think that's ridiculous. I think it's just a states' rights thing. I think gay marriage, although legally dubious, should be a states' rights issue. Interracial marriage should be a states' rights issue. All these things are states' rights issues. Because I typically defer to the Constitution, because the Constitution is a document designed to restrict and restrain the federal government and its power over the states. So, with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Be sure to click subscribe, ring the bell, like the video, leave a comment, leave me what you think, and if you disagree with any of the questions or answers that I had. With that being said, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.